Okay, now it just showed up. So,
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the Egg Harbor Library's book club. And we've been meeting virtually for the last few months. And today we're going to be discussing The Lost Girls of Paris. And let me introduce a few people right now. We have Morgan, who is our communications specialist for Door County Library System. We have Jess Reinecke.
Reinecke. You're under pressure. That's why you mispronounced it. Jess Reinecke.
Jess Reinecke, who is our building manager for the Crest Pavilion, which you can see in the background. That's our Egg Harbor Library. A drone shot for you. And we have Pam Jenoff, the author of The Lost Girls of Paris here, part of our discussion. So this is the way we're going to handle it today. We're going to do a Q&A. I'll start with some questions. If you have a question, all you need to do is type it into Facebook and in the discussion, right, Morgan? Where do you want them to put the questions?
You're muted. Here, let me unmute you.
Yeah. So if you are watching with us on Facebook, you can just make a comment on the discussion underneath it or next to it as you're watching. If you are with us in Zoom, there's a chat feature that you can see at the bottom of your screen, typically if you're on desktop, and you can send a message or questions that way too.
Okay. So Jess, do you have everyone muted or unmuted?
I'm going to mute everyone, and then you can unmute yourself. I'll unmute Janine for now, and then Morgan and Pam.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a couple other people coming in, so I'm just admitting them.
All right. So how many do we have in our little chat?
19 people, one person coming in, so 20.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we're going to get started. Today we're talking about The Lost Girls of Paris by Pam Jenoff, who is here with us today. This is a story about espionage during World War II. Grace Healy is rebuilding her life after losing her husband during the war. One morning, while passing through Grand Central Station on her way to work, she finds an abandoned suitcase tucked underneath a bench. Unable to resist her own curiosity, Grace opens the suitcase when she discovers a dozen photographs, each of a different woman. In an impulse, Grace takes the photographs and leaves the station. Grace soon learns that the suitcase belonged to a woman named Eleanor Trigg, a leader of the ring of female secret agents who were deployed out of London during the war. 12 of these women were sent to occupied Europe as couriers, radio operators to aid the resistance, but they never returned home, their fates a mystery. Setting out to learn the truth behind the women in the photograph, Grace finds herself drawn to a young mother turned agent named Marie, whose daring mission overseas reveals a remarkable story of friendship, valor, and betrayal. So today we have Pam, who is Pam Jenoff, who's very prolific. It looks like you have 11 books you've written.
10 plus an anthology that I was part of.
Okay.
My 11th will be out next May.
Oh, all right. Wow, that is a lot. Pam has a really interesting background. She was a foreign service officer, looked like right out of college, right after you got your master's degree in history. And she did all this foreign service work, which is fascinating. And then she went and got her law degree. And she's a professor now at Rutgers teaching law. And today she has her graduation for her students. So it's so nice that we have her joining us. The main characters of The Lost Girls of Paris were inspired by real people, weren't they? Like, how did you know about these and how did you get familiar with them?
So I was looking for my next idea, and I discovered the incredible story of the Special Operations Executive, which was a British agency that would send these agents behind enemy lines during World War II to engage in sabotage and subversion. And they quickly discovered that male agents were not ideal because they were readily detected on the streets of occupied France and Holland. And so someone decided, well, we could try sending women, which was quite a radical idea at the time. And they didn't know where to get the women from. They didn't have the natural kind of pipeline that they did of the men, for the men. And so these women came from all walks of life in Britain, and they trained to be deployed, and then they were dropped by parachute or a small plane behind enemy lines to do the work. And so my book is inspired by these real life women. In my book, well, let me back up. In real life, these women, they did a really good job, almost too good, because they became targets of German counterintelligence. And the operation was discovered and compromised. And many of the women were arrested. And 12 of the women never came home. They disappeared under a German program called Night and Fog. And so my book looks at this true history through the lens of fiction. And I've got Marie, who's a young single British mother who goes to serve as an agent, and she was inspired by some of the real women. And then I have a character, Eleanor Trigg, and she's the spy mistress. And she was very closely inspired by a real life woman named Vera Atkins, who was in charge of the SOE agents. And my third character, Grace, who you mentioned in New York, she's wholly fictitious.
Okay. So you part of the story is in Auschwitz, and I know I visited there about 4 years ago. Wow, that was such a moving experience. And you have some work that you did in Poland and in that area. You want to describe the work that you did? That, to me, that is just amazing.
So I will describe my work. First, a slight clarification. So none of my books actually go into the camps per se during the war. And that's just a very personal choice that I tell many stories from the war, but that's not generally my space to occupy. So my book actually looks at what happened to the women, but through, the lens of Eleanor Trigg, who goes to Dachau and to some of the other camps after the war in a kind of an investigative sort of role. Okay. But you're correct that my love of the era and my expertise comes from years that I spent for the State Department. I was sent to Krakow, Poland as a diplomat in the 1990s. And this was just after communism had ended. And so Poland and its neighbors had 50 years of communism where they really couldn't have an open dialogue about World War II. And as a result, there were many unresolved issues from the war that had to be dealt with in the present day. While I was there, I also became very personally close to the survivors who still lived in Krakow, the Jewish survivors. And so I had this experience that really transformed me on both a personal and professional level. And that is kind of what inspires all of my books.
So all of your books are World War II stories. Is that?
I wouldn't say all. So of the 10 books, most are historical fiction, although I wrote a couple moderns and some that go back and forth in time. And then of the historicals, most are World War II, but not exclusively. So I have a book called The Ambassador's Daughter, which is set at the Paris Peace Conference after World War I. And I also have a book that's set on the home front during World War II, and that's called The Last Summer at Chelsea Beach.
It was interesting. Anytime I read a book, there's always something that I get interested in. And I got interested in the trials because I heard about the Nuremberg trial, but I never realized that there were lots of other tribunals going around. And Eleanor kind of brings this out about trying to find out the truth and where are the girls. And so that kind of got me researching all the different and looking up who all these people were that were part of the trials. And so I'm glad I got to learn about that. Did you know, were you, the tribunals, I mean, you probably knew all about this from your studies in history. And then when you got over there, you probably found out lots more about these tribunals, and that led you to having it in the book.
But also, I learn a lot while I'm researching now. The incredible thing is, after 20 plus years of working with Holocaust and World War II material, I find new stories that just make me go, and gasp, these fresh original stories. And as long as it makes me feel that way, I'm hopeful it will make you feel that way as well. And that's how I kind of know there are still stories to be told.
Okay. Yeah. And that's just, I'm thinking about you, like you're a busy mom. I mean, you have 3 children, a 9-year-old and 11-year-old, twins, it sounds, 2 9-year-olds and 11-year-old.
Yes.
How do you do it? I mean, how do you do your research and your writing and teach law? You're like an amazing person. How do you do it?
I do it all poorly. I do too many things and none of them well. So this is the only spot in my house that I can sit that isn't totally messy. But if you looked behind me, you'll see there's nothing on the walls, no decor, no pictures, anything. So I live in squalor, like many busy moms. And you know what? The truth is that all the things I do, I really only do 3 things. I write, and I teach law school. And I really love all of those 3 things. So even if I hit the lottery, I haven't played the lottery, but if I hit the lottery, I would still do all 3 of those things. I would just slow down a tiny bit. So I'm pretty disciplined about my time, especially now with the kids home from school full time. So I have to do all of my writing before the first person wakes up in the morning. So if I'm on a deadline, which just started again yesterday, that looks like 4 a.m. or 4:45 a.m. To get that work done in the morning.
Okay, wow. I'm going to let Morgan open up with the questions, and are I have lots if you don't have any there yet.
We don't have any yet, so
okay,
start
I'll
asking, and then
continue.
it'll make people start thinking.
We've answered everything. My work is done.
Okay, so you have in your book 3 different points of view. Now I have to tell you, because we are in this pandemic, our libraries are closed, and our patrons are all doing ebooks or audiobooks. And so with this book, we mostly, the patrons who checked it out, listened to it. And because we couldn't get it in ebook format, most of us listened to it as an audiobook. So when listening to it as an audiobook, you get those 3 different points of view because of the different dialects that are being used by the narrator. When they pick the narrator, do you have anything to say about it? Or do they say, hey, Pam, look who we have for the narrator?
I actually do get a little bit of input. So typically what happens is they will send me audio tracks of multiple narrators whom they're considering. And then I get to say, oh, I like this one more so than this one. One thing I've learned, I'm not an audiobook person, and I am a terrible judge of narrators. So invariably, mine are different than the people in-house at my publisher, but they know best. I will say, though, I want to add on, I'm a huge library patron. In a given week, when we're not under the pandemic, I use 5 different library systems. So it's not uncommon for me on a Monday to have been to like 2+ libraries before noon, because between myself and the children, that volume of books. And I don't read on a screen. I only read books. And so my library actually called and checked on me during the pandemic. It was so cute. But I can't wait to get back.
Janine, we do have a question that came in from Carol on the Zoom chat. The question was, when you research, when do you know when to stop and start writing?
Well, research is, I'm going to say, I answer questions in a very long-winded fashion, but research is the funniest thing, I must tell you. One time I was on a panel with 2 authors who write modern fiction, and one of them said, yeah, I just kind of turn on the computer and start typing. And I was like, You what? Because there's this whole other job built in with research. And I think I won't answer all these questions, but I think when you talk about research, there's kind of three separate questions. How do you do the research? How do you weave the research into your story so I don't give you a big dump of material just because I think it's cool? And how do you not mess up the research, right? Make the mistakes that inevitably like seep into every single book. But specifically with respect to how do you know when it's time to stop, it varies from book to book. There are some books I've written that there was really a dearth of material, like where some books where I could not find the material. I will tell you, for Lost Girls, it was the opposite. There's a lot that has been written about the women of SOE, about the spy mistress, Vera Atkins. There a ton of memoir, lots has been written. And so this project was definitely a question of, okay, I have enough, I have to start writing, because there were so many different stories that of the women that you could just keep going. Now, for me, I do a lot of the research as I'm writing, as opposed to ahead of time, but I do research in little chunks, kind of a need to know basis. So it doesn't get quite so overwhelming. So.
And then Carol had a follow-up question. She went on to read Codename Lissy about Odette Sanson. Did you base any parts of your book on her?
I did not. I've read about Odette, but I don't think I've read the account she said. I'm familiar with Odette because, bear in mind, there were roughly 40 female agents for SOE. And so there's all of these different accounts. For example, Noor Khan was a very famous one, and I read a lot about her, different snippets. So my characters are not based on one particular agent. For example, my character is a single mother, and I read about a single mother who became an SOE agent. Another character, I might have borrowed how she was recruited, or the romantic feelings she had in the field, or something like that. So it's really a tiny little strand as opposed to like one of them.
Got it.
Do we have any more questions, or I'll ask some? I see there's some in the chat.
I got those out of the chat.
Okay. All right. So this story is a story of friendship. I mean, the women and their friendship, and it's also a story of betrayal. And for those of you who haven't read the book, we're going to give the ending right now.
Are you?
Please do.
Okay, I wasn't going to do it because I know you're on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm doing it, everyone.
All
so
right.
close your ears if you don't want to hear.
Wait, I want to say last night I was on with a group, and what they had me do, which I've never done before, we did the book club, and then anyone who didn't want to spoiler the ending logged off for the last 5 minutes. It was a really cool idea, but go for it.
Okay, so maybe, okay.
Yeah, it was the British government, which I was like, whoa, I can't believe this. They betrayed their own people because of the D-Day date, and that betrayal of our own government, you kind of are seeing more and more. I mean, it's out there, other governments betraying their own people. So those themes, the betrayal of the British government to their own people, to Eleanor, and was really big for me, and made me think about our own time and betrayal. And yeah, so do you want to talk a little bit more about that British betrayal?
I do. Before I talk about the British betrayal, I'd love to talk about theme for a second, because it's funny. Theme is not something that I say like, okay, I'm going to write a book about this. I don't think about theme. It usually comes up after the fact when I'm talking to a group such as yours, and I go, oh yeah, that's what I meant to say. So for example, when I wrote my previous book, The Orphan's Tale, it came out a month after the inauguration, and it's a book that's all about refuge and sanctuary and these themes that became really prevalent at that time. Then this book, became very timely. And I agree with you. It's about the trust we place in government and whether that trust is warranted. And I've got another thing I'm working on right now, which suddenly I realize really is very close to the pandemic in a way. So it's just interesting how these things pop up. Specifically with regard to the betrayals, there were actually, if you read the history, multiple betrayals and multiple theories of betrayal. There was a theory that the spy mistress might have betrayed, which has never been borne out. There was a theory that someone within the resistance, one of the leadership, might have cut a deal with the Germans, thinking that he was helping his people, and it backfired. There's another betrayal, pretty well documented, that a French woman who was having a relationship with one of the male agents was jealous of a female agent and turned her in. So all of these histories came together. I had a streamline for my book, but the most established is the government betrayal theory. And if you want to read more about that, you can Google the phrase radio spiel, S-P-I-E-L. And it talks really about the very true fact that the government knew that the Germans had the radio, and they continued to feed misinformation as a way to mislead them at the expense of the agents' lives. It's true.
Yeah, it's hard to hear, but yeah, I know. Did that come out like in a trial?
I don't have the dates in front of me, but the confirmation of it, it was an inquiry, a government inquiry, and I forget the name of it. It's escaping me. But it went on for several years, and probably by the late 1940s, early 1950s, it was well established. But the Vera Atkins, who was the spy mistress, she knew that something was afoot. And so after the war, she went looking and asking the hard questions. And if you want to read a book both about her and about the betrayal, there's a book about her called A Life in Secrets by Sarah Helm, and it's a really good nonfiction account of what went on.
Well, good. We need those. Just, I want to find out more about it, and that's a good recommendation. And so you're working on another book right now. Is it World War II?
It is my new project. It's inspired by a story of some people who survived, believe it or not, in the sewer during World War II. There was a group of people that had to flee to the sewer, and it's about my fictitious character and who's in the sewer, and the connection she makes with a young woman of her own age up on the street.
So is it the Paris sewers? Or
no, it's in Poland.
Well, yeah. And I thought in that book they had mentioned a foxhole, like this is better than the foxhole. Is a foxhole, or maybe I misheard it. Maybe I misheard it.
You have read the book more recently than me, so I'm not entirely sure.
Maybe you slid something in there and you didn't even realize it.
Full credit for way more foresight than I have.
So do you have a close relationship with your editor? Do you have the same editor for all of your books?
I have had the same I am with the publisher that I started with on my very first book, Commandant's Girl, and it's a true love affair. I mean, the whole team, from the people I've worked with over the course of 15 years, this whole kind of relationship we've built. And I have worked with the same editor for the past several books. And so I have my editor, my agent, and myself, and they're sort of my dream team. And it's very much a collaborative process, whether it's at the outset or tomorrow we have a big Zoom call to put our heads together on some revisions. But they are kind of exact. I don't turn in perfect work. Like I don't turn in something that doesn't need any help. I need a lot of help. And so they are my people, and they're the only people who kind of see the mush before it's done.
Okay, well, that's neat. So do you have a social media person now, or are you your social media, or are you just, hey, let that alone?
I am my whole team, okay. Other than my publishing team. I am, I don't have researchers, I don't have an assistant, and I don't have social media person, none of that. But I've been very quiet on social media since stay at home. I must be honest. I'm there, but not that much. Two reasons. One, I've had this breakneck revision deadline since December. And then what happened, the craziest story for the book, I was going to go to Poland for the first time in 20 years for a research trip. And I was supposed to leave on March 11th. So that never happened. And thank goodness it didn't, because on March 12th, I had an emergency appendectomy. So I went into the hospital and I came out and the world was shut down. And so I have just been so focused on the revisions, the kids, getting everything, teaching and getting everything together. But I am on social media. I love readers. I love my writer friends. And so I really do invite everybody to find me. Either I have a Facebook author page, Twitter. I'm terrible at Instagram. I'm even worse at Pinterest, or on email. But I really do value each and every conversation that we can have.
So your website, you have someone who does your website?
My husband is IT. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky. I have my husband does my website, and I'm very, very lucky for that.
Well, I loved your questions for the book because they're different from all the other questions out there. You look at the different book club discussions, and yours were different. There were more in-depth questions, and I liked them a lot. And
now you're reminding me I need to do them for the one I'm working on. I hadn't thought of that yet. That's awesome.
And I thought we would go through them after you leave us for your graduation. So is it a virtual graduation?
It's a virtual graduation. I just have the most incredible students. I teach at Rutgers, and I adore them. They're such hardworking people, and they've really just risen up. I mean, when one of the subjects I teach is legal writing, and when they turned in these amazing briefs, despite what we had been through, I just had tears because they're such a special group. So I'm going to go to graduation with them. But the other reason, of course, that I like to just stay for half an hour is so that you all can have the candid conversations once I log off.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us today. And I see some clapping there.
Thank you.
Clapping. But thank you.
I hope to see you for the next one.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Pam. Okay. All right. So we can unmute now.
Okay, I unmuted all. So you can unmute on your end. If you're still muted, you should be.
All right. So
Janine, I have a question for you. Why were you shocked by the government betrayal? Explain that. I mean, it's Machiavellian. It's 12 people as opposed to greater good. I mean, it's
I
12 people as opposed to D-Day. Plus, I mean, I don't think being an overly sexist, it's 12 women. It's in a very different time. It's in a very dire time where you're up against odds that are just incredible. You're united.
Mm-hmm.
There's a united front. Everyone wants to get rid of the Nazis. Everyone wants to get rid of Hitler. Everyone wants to be free. And everyone is willing to make sacrifice, and there's sacrifice going on all the time. So I'm kind of amazed that you were surprised that it was the British government that gave them up.
Was it just the women? Or I thought it was SOE had males too, right? Or was it just the women?
Gave everybody up.
Gave up everybody. Yeah. No, yeah. I don't know.
It's not the only example. I mean, the most prevalent example is giving up the Jews.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a time when it's a brutal Machiavellian time on both sides.
Yeah. But I thought, that theme and what we're seeing and hearing in government today, I mean, government isn't always truthful with us. And I think this is...
That's an understatement.
Yes. It's interesting. One of the things that Churchill is credited for is being honest.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first times he speaks in 1940, when he's first elected, he gives the famous speech of, "All I have to offer you is blood, sweat, and toil." And he thinks that they're just going to push him out again because he's been very unpopular. And they rally around him and appreciate him for that. Yet his government, in their underpinnings and the background, do all kinds of things that are clandestine and perhaps unfair. But it's Machiavellian, but it's the greater good.
Yeah, it's funny.
power, then we're going to be fulfilling. And so you've got to,
sorry, Nancy, I'm sorry, I can't understand you at all. You're like,
Okay, get a little closer to the computer, probably.
Sorry. Okay. I just see that when you're in government, you tend to be in power. And power corrupts. And so there are going to be those people that are self-interested and are not looking for the greater good. And it's going to be in any organization, not just government.
Thanks for moving closer.
You're welcome.
Well, did you all like the book?
Very much so.
Yeah,
Very much so.
Very much, yes.
And I listened to it. I really liked the different voices and accents and things. I thought that was really good.
And I did not like the reader.
Really? I liked her.
I felt she was whiny. I was like, oh, she's whiny. I don't know. But yeah, how many of you were able to read it as a book?
I read it as a book.
Yeah.
Well, I did both.
I read it on Kindle.
Yeah,
I don't because I couldn't
I don't
get it.
do ebooks. I have to read it.
Yeah.
I had the book prior to it coming up in book club, got about halfway through and then realized I didn't have time to finish, so also did audio. I do most of mine as audiobooks, all the books.
Yeah. So I wasn't happy with this audio version, but it was the only way I could, it was my only way of reading it. Yeah, I liked it. And a lot of book clubs are like, oh, we don't want to do World War II. And I think it's important. World War II is important reading. And yeah, you shouldn't do 2 or 3 a year, which there's a lot out there, but I think you need to read one a year at least. It sounds like Trissa is really into World War II, and
I just finished The Splendid and the Vile by Eric Larson, which is about Churchill. Well, it's about May 1940 to May 1941. So when Churchill's trying to get the United States on his side, and it's amazing. And it led me to a biography of Clementine Churchill, and I'm really happy that Ms. Jenoff mentioned the Life in Secrets, because I wanted to know about Vera.
Yeah, I listed a Time, I think it's a magazine article with a list of all those nonfiction books. So that's out on our virtual book club page. Yeah.
And
so
Nancy, thank you for that obituary of the French resistance woman.
Yeah.
That was,
I really thought that tied in quite well to the story. Here was a real woman who was in the French resistance and could have been another character in the book.
yeah.
Well,
About a year.
I read this right over VE Day, May 8th, which was Victory in Europe Day. So just knowing that, it just was pretty powerful to, be remembering this. And then any of us who had, well, my parents lived through the World War II time era. And so just being tuned in with that, I just thought it was a powerful timing for the story to come up.
Yeah.
There was a book that I read about a year ago that when I started this book, I was like, man, have I read this before? It's called The Lilac Girls by Martha Kelly. It also kind of follows the female spies. I don't know how many of you guys have read it.
Yeah, I read that too.
That was good.
Has anyone read the Alice Network? Because on Goodreads.
Yep, I read that one too. Yeah.
And they were comparing it. They weren't very nice to her on Goodreads. There must have been a first publishing which had a lot of errors in it, and they pulled it down and fixed the errors, like just little things an editor is supposed to catch. And so in Goodreads, they were they went through the errors, which I was like, oh,
Wait, for the Alice Network or for Pam's book?
For Pam's book. Yeah. So just little that she wouldn't have watched TV, the news. It would have been on the radio, and just little tiny things. But I was so surprised that people tear it apart and then write the publishers, and then the publishers fix it. So there was the first printing, and then a lot of things got corrected in the second printing. So, which I found interesting, But I didn't notice any kind of error. I thought the love interest was a little with Julian and Marie. A little unbelievable. And when she had the chance to leave, she should have left and didn't leave. But I think that plane never made it back, so she would have been dead. So I didn't like that. And then at the end, I wanted Grace to I forget his name.
Mark.
I wanted her to like him and live happily ever after, and that didn't happen.
I kind of thought maybe it was implied that she was going to live her life and then go after him later, but it's just the romantic side. I had something I wondered about in the beginning. Marie seemed to so easily go along with this plan when she was met by this one guy who said when she was first introduced into the program, it just seemed that she just went off so readily. I don't know if that was common in those days.
Yeah, I agree. And
leaving her daughter and
too.
It just so easily left her life behind. It's like, I would have been a little suspicious if somebody said go to this place and meet somebody at a certain time. And
yeah,
I don't know the history behind that, but.
Well, and a suitcase being left at a train station is pretty scary right now. So,
would anyone have actually picked up that suitcase and looked through it?
No.
Or if you'd found it, would you have just told somebody or taken it to Lost and Found? I'm sure I would never have pawed through somebody's suitcase or backpack that I just saw sitting around.
You wouldn't have done it now, but would you have done it in the time period that it was written in?
Never. I would never have gone through somebody's like that.
No, I would not have opened up a random suitcase. I probably would have turned it in, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then
I wouldn't have even opened it up.
Turned it in because that person could have left it and was coming right back.
Yeah. So that was kind of and then all those photographs of them playing, she said she had these photographs. That's okay. She didn't have the pictures of the girls because she has the photographs of their training. Was it the training, the photographs that she had? Marie had a bunch of photographs, and I'm thinking, I don't know if you'd have a camera and taking pictures back then.
If you're asking all these questions, how did you make the leap of faith to continue? I mean, I don't understand these questions. I mean, you have to accept that she does take the photograph, that there are photographs, that she goes on from there, and you got to keep going. And by asking all these questions, how did you want to keep reading the book is what I want to know.
No, I didn't come up with these questions. These are from the Goodreads people. After I listened along, I just at the end was thinking some of the things to me, I don't know if I would have, I don't know, the love interest, I think it wasn't necessary, but I don't know.
Don't you think it was really important that Pam wrote a book that exposed women doing really important work at a time where they weren't mentioned, even in her obituary, she wasn't mentioned in a couple of the things. And I think that's really important about reading a book like this, is to realize that women were there doing good things.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
agree. Not
Yeah.
only good things, very important things. If you
Yeah.
want another book about
Yeah.
a woman doing very important things, Michael Harris just discussed last week at the History Book Club for the whole library, The Woman Who Smashed Codes.
Oh,
And that's
Elizabeth-
available on our YouTube channel if you'd like to watch that.
Right, and it's, someone made the comment that, someone made the comment that they found it a little improbable that Marie just went along with this as a single mother. Well, read The Woman Who Smashed Codes and how she gets involved in it is really amazing. She walks, and this is truth, this is nonfiction. She walks into the Newberry Library to check out the Shakespeare folio, and she winds up being the woman who cracks all the Nazi codes. And ladies, she does it with paper and pencil. She doesn't have a computer in her mind. It's an amazing book. If you want to know about people that unsung heroes, read The Woman Who Smashed Codes.
And if you're ever in Chicago, you should stop at the Newberry Library. It's I don't know if anyone's been there. Carol, have you been to the Newberry? Yeah.
I live only a few blocks from the Newberry, so I stop by there all the time. It's amazing.
Yeah. So we did it as a field trip when I was getting my master's degree. Has anyone read?
Let's do it as a book club field trip when this is all over.
I just checked out Orphan's Tale, and she comes up with some great, the sewer book will be interesting, but has anyone read The Orphan's Tale? And that is, it sounds like there's something of a circus theme in there. And so, she comes up with some really interesting themes. I think she's good at that. So, no, I like her. And I'm going to, her books aren't, they're easy to read. And I wanted to actually read a book and not listen to it.
Yeah, I missed half of it. I couldn't get the thing. I had one wrong letter.
Can I ask a book group question? So how does your book group choose books? How does that happen? Is that just, is it a group choice or is it
really good
from the
question.
top choice?
Yeah, we did I send out I pick the books that we can get, and then I send it out and get some feelers from everybody. And in the long run, it's what can we get, and what I look at what NPR recommends. I look at what Reese recommends, and then from there I look. I put together a list, and then
I'd like to throw something in. Janine does a really good job of this. I belong to several book clubs, and this one I really feel, and I've been in this one the shortest amount of time. I've been in a couple for 30 years. This one I really feel we read things, we read a memoir, we read a mystery, we read history. She looks at the whole of things, and I really feel that she chooses good books. She chooses books that I wouldn't necessarily read that I read, and I belong to 4 book clubs. And I think the process of this one is one of the best.
So our next book is Lager Queen of Minnesota, and I recommend that you actually read the book, the print book. I have copies here at the library. So you can start picking up books on Tuesday, and I want to make sure everyone gets a print copy. Listening to it, you lose some things, they don't tell you what the chapter headings are, and they're important. So I think
No, I think that they do, Janine. I feel like they did. I read and listened. Yeah.
They did, and I just didn't realize that that's why they said that.
Because they're a little bit obtuse,
Yeah.
so you don't associate it. But I did both, and reading was good, but listening was also good because you hear the strong Minnesotan accent, which I think is kind of
yeah. So I do have print books for that one. So our next book, The Lager Queen of Minnesota, you'll able to get a print book from Egg Harbor Library. And it's on Libby too, but there's a wait list. And I thought since you've been doing so much e-reading and listening, it's time to actually get a book in our hands. And I had checked, I mean, these are from all different libraries and we're gonna use them. So we have them here before they have to go back. So yeah. Any other, her questions are fantastic, but they really go into depth. And should we finish up with a couple more questions, or anyone have any comments?
Did Marie, what happens to her in the end? Because I wasn't able to finish it completely. Does she gets converted to work for the Germans, and then did they kill her in the end?
No, so she's the one who went and got the suitcase. She was supposed to meet, she had gotten, they let her move to the US and they expedited her and got her to the US, and Eleanor was supposed to meet her at the station.
Got it.
And
so she got her child. She was allowed to leave Britain with her child, so they ended up in New York.
Yeah.
Got it. The baby shoes. That explains the baby shoes in the suitcase.
Right. Yeah, and there was in the baby shoes, she opened them up. There was a memo or a telegraph that had been passed, and that it kind of gave the information that it was the British government that had been,
Got it.
and not Eleanor, because Grace kind of thought Eleanor was the one who had betrayed them.
Mm-hmm.
Eleanor would never have betrayed them. So that kind of gave that evidence. But, you know, that Grace has sticky fingers. She goes to the Pentagon or whatever and takes more documents. I mean, she took another envelope of information. So Marie doesn't want to really go back to Britain, and Eleanor or Grace helps her make a statement. And someone help me think of what else happened. So Grace.
Well, that's okay. I mean, that's okay. I just wanted to see if I had like an hour left, and I just.
Yeah. So Grace finds Marie, and in the end, Grace receives a little inheritance, and she uses that to bury Eleanor.
Oh,
she
nice.
pays for the funeral, and she goes to the UK to put this statement that Marie has made. So, yeah.
Did anyone else think from the very beginning, when Eleanor was hit by the car, that she was, killed by somebody?
Yes.
And in the end, you realize that it was accidental, but all along, I was expecting to find out who,
somebody offed her.
Had her knocked off.
Yeah, for sure. That was like a red herring, because that other person that Grace interviewed in DC had said her sister was killed by a car accident too.
Right. I thought there was
car accidents. They're trying to kill them off.
Right. That's what I thought.
Yeah, me too. I thought the same thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was a nice piece of intrigue that Pam led into, that that is totally compatible with the British government was the reason they all went down.
Right, but just an accident.
Yeah. I said,
but you don't know that until the end. Again, a nice craftsmanship on the author's part.
Yeah. No, I think I'm just amazed that she does so much, and has such a. If you can read her bio, how she got a degree in history and then worked for the State Department, and in different forms for different people, and then ended up in Poland working for the State Department. So yeah, and then goes to law school, and then has kids. I mean, wow, she's just like, and doesn't even have anyone running anything for her. So she's an amazing person. Yeah.
I haven't read any of her other books. Which, if I were to choose the next one to read of hers, what would you all recommend?
Has anyone read any of her other books? No one has read. I picked up Orphan's Tale. You know, I went to the, I picked it up here. I'm at the library today. And I went and got the Orphan's Tale. It made me want to read another one of her books. And that Orphan's Tale, I think, was a New York Times bestseller, just like The Lost Girls of Paris. And
I read that one. It's good.
You read The Orphan's Tale?
Yeah, I read that a couple of years ago. That's a good one. I think you'd like it. Have
you read any of her other books?
No, that's the only one.
The only one. I think those two, The Lost Girls and The Orphan's Tale, I thought it was another orphan train or orphan moving west. And like, because there's so many of those, and I'm like, oh, it's a World War II story. Yeah, so I'm going to read that one next because its premise sounds pretty interesting. So
I think it's so amazing that she was so generous with her time and willing to come to, you know, a little book group out here in the Midwest.
Yeah.
So I do authors. I know your group has had authors come in the past, correct? I think, yeah. So apparently they're very willing to do that, unless there's someone, you know, that's like in the mega bucks area, but otherwise it's really interesting.
And when I wrote to her, someone had recommended to me to contact her. And a lot of our patrons go to Florida for the winter, and there is a book club down in Naples that costs $300 to join, and they use the money to get a author in for their book club, and Pam was the author. So I knew that when I was selecting the books, and I was hoping that then those people from Naples would join our discussion and tell us about it. But I spoke with one of them, and who said she was really good and I should write to her. So I wrote her and told her I had heard from the Naples group. So there's always like a little connection, and they said she was really good and we would really love to have you. So we've had two, and
Laura Lippman came on for Lady in the Lake.
Yeah. And with Laura, I just I wrote her too and just said we would love to hear from her. Really no connection. I just said our group.
That's awesome. It's good to know. Yeah.
Janine, one thing that I appreciated about Pam Jenoff today was that she left us. When we did Lady in the Lake, we did not talk about that book. All we did was talk to her, which is fine, but that's a whole different aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do the research? How do you do this? How do you do that? What did you feel about this? But I really appreciated her leaving us because we're talking about the book. Because when the discussion of She Smashed Codes was last week, the author was great. He was like about a 40-year-old man, was really interesting and really good, but we never talked about the book. The group just kept asking him questions, and that's an entirely different conversation.
Yeah.
I really appreciated her saying, thanks, I'm only going to be here for part of it.
Yeah. And I wrote to her, and I had it in a different format. I had her talking for the first 15 minutes. She says, I don't do that. I do a question and answer kind of thing. So last night I'm up writing the question.
You did very well.
Again.
I think authors in general, it behooves them to do things like this. And in the changing situations that we're in, I think that it's really incredible, but I wouldn't see why they wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You can't go to a book festival now and meet them that way and ask them questions that way. So this, in a sense, is like a mini an opportunity for a mini book festival. And I wouldn't understand why they wouldn't do it because, you know.
Well, I wonder if J. Ryan Strandall for the next book would. I mean, he's.
Oh, he already did Bailey's Harbor. I wouldn't ask
Oh,
him.
yeah, he did.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or in March. So you can actually watch it on our YouTube channel too.
Yeah.
You never know. He was pretty gregarious, so you never know. He might want to.
That would be great. I would like that. You know, I was going to say, Trissa, one thing when authors nowadays, when they want to get a book contract, part of the thing is you have to let the publisher know how you are going to promote your books. That they've really stepped back from that when you're beginning the process. So you have to come across with the social media thing big time. So I'm sure that's probably part of her package.
Right, I think it is, but but I think it's interesting, Janine, that you didn't like the narrator when she said that she got to pick her up. So now I would like to ask her why she picked that narrator.
Yeah.
And I know a couple people that do read, and they're chosen because of their voice and the way they can inflect and all kinds of stuff. But
yeah,
I liked her. I don't know. I liked the narrator, so
yeah, and
it's a differing of opinion, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know.
Once again, I want to say to you, Janine, you, Morgan, and you, Jess, thank you very much for doing this for us.
It was excellent. Absolutely
I cannot
excellent.
tell you how great this is that you do this, and that we get to keep coming to this book. We get to keep coming to book clubs, and we get to keep discussing this. I just really think the Door County Library should be right up there with hero signs. I really do.
Hey, you know what? I think that
nice.
you do almost a better job in this virtual discussing the books. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I will say that, you know, how funny has it been, like, this whole journey of, like, starting on Zoom and being, like, super nervous to, like, now we're all talking comfortably. You know, I think that's super cool.
And I have to say, our lady in the lake, I'm forgetting her name. Help me.
Laura Lippman.
Yeah, Laura Lippman. She was our very first, it was the first week of the pandemic, and we didn't know how to do it. We had no idea. There was no one.
It was great. She was wonderful. She was delightful. She was as panicked as we were. That made it really real. But I don't think you made any problem. Oh, yeah, maybe it took a couple minutes to get on, but I did this with one of my book clubs, and I'm going to be the tech brains, so just everybody. Okay?
I think it just goes to show that we're all human, and it was great to have a learning experience all together, because sometimes people feel like we're all knowing, and it's just so happened we've done it a few times. So.
Hey, so I put on the virtual page, Laura Lippman has been on Sunday morning, CBS Sunday morning, and she's been in a lot of articles lately because of her pandemic Instagram. She dresses up and then takes a picture of herself.
Right, I saw
and
that.
all her old outfits and
does her hair up and everything.
Yeah. So,
before we go, I'd like to thank Carol Sturgis for connecting us to the Egg Harbor. This has been fabulous.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad we had a good turnout, Janine. We've got like 5 people here.
It has been wonderful.
From Milwaukee, so hello, Door County.
This has been, and you know, of course, I'm very grateful to hear from Egg Harbor and bringing the author, but I wanted to make a special point to thank Carol for setting all of this up.
Okay, thank you.
Janine, did I hear you say the library opened on the Crest Pavilion opens on Tuesday?
Oh, you get to pick up books. Morgan is putting out something.
There's going to be a press release. There's going to be a press release that will be going out later today or first thing tomorrow morning. And then watch our Facebook and our website. We're going to be having some information about how to go through the process for pickup service.
But the building itself will not be open quite yet. So we'll still continue doing virtual programming.
And on that note, I just want to throw out there, if you're interested in any of the other book clubs, we have 2 coming up next week. We have the Multicultural Group meets on Tuesday at 1 p.m. and here on Zoom. And it's going to be The Lost Man by Jane Harper. And the codes are on our website if you want to join us. And then on June 3rd, the Bailey's Harbor Book Club is meeting at 7 p.m. And that's Wednesday. And we're going to be discussing Population 485 by Michael
That's a
Perry.
great book.
And
Yeah.
he's going to be there, much similar
Oh,
to
wow.
Which day is that, Morgan?
That's on Wednesday at 7.
Ooh.
Wow.
So we're having lots of author events. It's really amazing. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been fun. Yes. It's so lonely here by myself.
Well, I'll be there with you next week.
Maybe drive-bys and everyone can honk at the library for you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Janine, you're not alone. Isn't your pooch with you?
Which is I've been bringing my dog with because I have to talk to someone, you know.
Yeah, the building's not old enough to have ghosts yet.
Right. However, I don't know.
Well, it's good that everyone came today, and
Well, thank you so much.
and
Thanks, Janine. Thanks for inviting us.
yeah, and our next book is Lager Queen of Minnesota. A great story. I'm just loving it, and I highly recommend it to your group to read too. So.
And everyone's welcome to come to our book clubs too. So don't feel like just because we're Door County Library that you can only come to the ones you're invited to. Everyone is invited. So please join.
Oh, well, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Janine, should we reserve the book, or do we just call the library? How do we get the Lager Queen book?
You're gonna have to call me on Monday, and then I'll arrange for you to get your book.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. Just Monday, call Egg Harbor Library.
Okay,
That'll
sounds
be
good.
the call-in day for all of you. And Trissy, you have stuff on the hold shelf that you'll be able to pick up. It might be
Really?
yours.
Wow.
And, I
Thank
think
you.
Linda has stuff on the hold shelf.
Okay. I have to go, everyone. Thanks so
All right.
much.
Okay.
Bye again.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Great job. Thank you.
Thanks a bunch. Thanks for the update about the hold shelf. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye.